name is Anat Admati, and I am the director of the Corporation Society Initiative. We have this little series going called Power to Truth, in which I discuss issues around power to truth with visitors who happen upon town.
Mm-hmm.
And today we have a special guest named Rutger Bregman, who is here for a BBC Wreath lecture, the last one of a series of 4 that will happen tonight. The entire series is called Moral Revolution, which is something that Rutger is trying to bring about.
And you as well, right?
Yes, me too, which is why his book Moral Ambition really resonated with me, because I think those of us who have a bit of the bug of moral ambition want more people to have that bug. And so books like that make it cooler,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is sort of, moral ambition needs marketing. And
Mm-hmm.
so you seem to be aware of that,
Mm-hmm.
and do a good job of that, kind of making it cool, and actually telling people, what I often say: see something, do something. But then there is a seeing and all that. So welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be
And
with you.
Thank you. And we just coming out of a lunch with a bunch of students, mostly MBA students. And a really good discussion, and we were just saying how much enthusiasm there was for just talking about this. I mean, what are some thoughts you have about?
Well, it wasn't a representative sample, right?
No, it
of
was
Stanford
not.
students. These were the weirdos.
Selective audience that tends to be more morally ambitious and wanted to discuss how to be and what to do and what advice you and others would give to people like them. Some undergrads, mostly MBAs. So what stood out to you? Something?
Well, look, basically my whole career, I've been interested in what economists would call the allocation of talent. Like, what are some of the most talented people in our society actually doing with their career, with their precious life on this earth? And what I've seen, and I think what you've seen as well, is an enormous waste of talent. So many smart, bright, talented, ambitious people going into careers of limited impact or negative impact. We talked about the Bermuda Triangle of talent. That's what a friend of mine calls it, which is like consultancy, finance, and corporate law. That sucks up so many of our best and brightest. I think some people here at Stanford think that this is a place where you meet your co-founder, then you drop out, and then you go and work for some tech companies. And I'm not saying that all of that is socially useless, but I mean, if you look at the stuff that's being financed right now, I mean, so much is just basically new forms of addiction and casinos and gambling and just, in my view, a lot of BS. So we got to change that. We need, some of these really talented people to work on the most pressing issues that we actually face as a species.
Yeah. So the big question is, how do you allocate those talented people and get them to want to do that work that would make a difference? Because that's the subtitle of your book: Stop Wasting Your Talent and Start Making a Difference, presumably a positive difference. So one of you kind of have a list there of illusions.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wanted to start with the first one about the illusion of awareness.
Mm-hmm.
Because I only picked up this moral ambition path after the financial crisis of 2007 to 2009, when I started wondering what just happened, and I fell into this enormous rabbit hole of the kinds of things that people say and do in banking. So the rabbit hole is what they say, the curiouser things that they say, and a lot of BS. And what they do is reckless. Mm-hmm. But they get away with it because they confuse everybody. Mm-hmm. They confuse everybody with the jargon. They confuse everybody with what they say. They confuse everybody with the threats that they make. Mm-hmm. And so simple corrective measures are just missed all the time. And it was incredible how hard it is to make people even aware of it, let alone do something about it. Both were very difficult. Yeah. So getting the truth and empowering the truth was sort of impossible. So the question I have for you is, what does it take for people to become aware of problems? How in your experience, do they become aware of causes? You have a number of examples in your book.
Yeah. So I think that's a really good point, that complexity, deliberate complexity, is often
Obscuring.
created in order to maintain the status quo. And
Exactly.
finance doesn't have to be that complex.
That's right.
It's just that there's a lot of people making a lot of money on, making it more complicated than it actually has to be,
others,
right?
Yeah.
One cause area that I care a lot about is tax evasion, tax avoidance. Like, we've got this massive industry of thousands and thousands of lawyers and accountants creating these really complex loopholes, abusing, all the little gaps in the law to indeed not pay taxes, or at least to have their clients not pay taxes. And indeed, that stuff gets complicated really, really quickly. So I think what you need in those cases sometimes are radical nerds who really understand all those complexities. Well, radical nerds like you, basically, who understand those complexities and expose them. One of the stories that I talk about in my book is the story of what Ralph Nader did in the late 60s and the 70s. He was able to recruit an enormous amount of very talented Ivy League graduates. At some point, a third of Harvard Law School applied to work with him. And he convinced them not to go and work for one of these boring law firms, but instead go and work for him in Washington. And there's one historian who estimates that they had their fingerprints on 25 pieces of federal legislation. So they were really able to use their highly specialized knowledge to take on some of these issues. And that's one of the case studies that we are really inspired by at the School for Moral Ambition, which is an organization that I co-founded.
On taxes, by the way.
Well, that's one of the causes we work on.
No, I understand that.
Yeah.
I mean, in my book that I gave you today, The Banker's New Clothes, we end with a description of, in the last chapter called Above the Law, we discuss a tax fraud case that was absolutely massive in all of Europe. And I don't know if anybody is aware of it, because when I go in this country, virtually nobody is aware of it. And even in Europe, not a lot of people are aware of it. I don't know if you heard of the Cum-Ex tax
Yeah, I've
fraud.
heard about that. Yeah.
Okay, so that was not complicated. That was not that complicated. Executing it was a little more complicated, but understanding what it is was not. The problem with it lasting 20 years is nobody was paying attention to it. And the people who were aware of it were benefiting from it. And there were even tax lawyers and others who said it was fine to do, even though it's clearly a fraud. And the prosecutor, the German prosecutor who started, really going after the cases, resigned in 2024, saying that there was political pressure not to do these cases. And even in your country, Netherlands, this was going on.
I know,
which was a plain robbing of taxpayers.
So I think this is a good example, because what we need in these cases is we need the righteous anger, basically. We need that energy. People should be angry. They're allowed to be angry. And but then we also need the actual skill set, the expertise to fix these kind of things.
So the prosecutor herself, who visited my class and will visit again, said, why aren't people on the streets, about this? Why is this collusion between the government and the bank continues? And so I think, to some of our current political problems and why things are so difficult right now, and why, empathy is out of fashion and all kinds of good things that should happen are kind of looked down upon these days, is unfocused anger. So I think the notion of public awareness of where the wrong is important.
What's interesting is that if you look at an issue like tax fairness, is that the vast majority of people from the left to the right already agree that our current system is broken. We've got the illegal tax evasion, obviously, also massive amounts of technically legal tax avoidance. But then even if you ignore those two, then still you have a tax system that really benefits capital and doesn't really benefit labor. And the vast majority of people agree that we need to fix that we need higher taxes on the wealthy. And I'm really interested in that question of how do we get from A to B. So that's one of the illusions that I talk about in the book, is that, just the awareness or sometimes the vague awareness that something is wrong is just not nearly enough.
Yeah, I mean, some of the issues that I have focused on are not even in the sort of right versus left variety, which this one certainly is.
Yeah.
I mean, this, you're being a real lefty when you speak like that. But I think some other flaws in the system and in clear injustices of the way the legal system works, the way corporate accountability works, are really require the Ralph Naders and the kind of thing that he was able to marshal, the kind of resources. So I what you're doing is very important. So thank you for that. And I think that what you heard today is about the skill set and like at lunch and the boring consulting job, but maybe you should go there, and overall organizations. So it's like, how do you scale up things? How do you do things so that they can actually take care of problems? Is it, what can an individual do versus, a group of people, and how do they organize themselves?
Yeah. So that's what we talked about today during lunch with a bunch of really bright students, relatively at the beginning of their career. And there are honestly no easy answers here. So the answer that's going to work for one person may not work for the other person, right? So we were discussing, for example, like, hey, should you do your 2 years at McKinsey? Or is that actually very dangerous, right? Are you going to get sucked into that Bermuda Triangle of talent and never have an impactful career? And look, I do think that for some people, it might actually be a useful experience to go there, learn a thing or two. I would have like 2 simple pieces of advice here. Is one, really think carefully about the people you surround yourself with. Like, who are your peers? Find yourself a radical group of do-gooders or a safe space of do-gooders, people who like continuously remind you who you are. And
otherwise you forget yourself.
Yeah. And then the second thing is make a pledge, make a public pledge. Make a pledge of what you're going to do with your capital. And I think we got to talk about 3 forms of capital in particular: financial capital, obviously, cultural capital, and human capital, like what you do with your talent. So with financial capital, you can make a promise. You can say like, okay, if I'm going to get rich, I'm going to donate at least, well, you can start with, say, 10% of my income to some of these really important causes. I think that in and of itself is already very helpful. I've experienced it in my own life because it's actually much more than what most people do. And then you have to start thinking about, okay, what am I giving it to? Like, what are some of the most important causes? That in and of itself is already useful practice. And then how do you use your human capital? You can make a pledge to say, okay, maybe for now I'm going to work at this consultancy firm, but I promise to myself and to others that at some point I'm going to make the jump to impact. And we've got a few people in our community that have done exactly that.
There's also impact on the side. I mean, you can do impact extra.
Sure, as a volunteer, that's absolutely true.
So there's sort of I know people who were sort of to pay the bills were doing a certain job, but their real passions were out of work. So there's sort of the 2 stages of career kind of path, and there is sort of the parallel your passion over there and just work. The rest of the time.
Well, there's this notion of earning to give that was actually, I'm not sure if it was invented, but I know that Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels did it. Like, Friedrich Engels was working and paying the bills, and Karl Marx was was working on Das Kapital. So it's an old strategy, and I've become really interested in that because you don't want to live in a world where everyone working on the big global problems, whether it's malaria, tuberculosis, or pandemic prevention, or factory farming, work at severely underfinanced, not very prestigious, tiny non-profits. Like, I would want to really expand these causes and to try and make them very prestigious, and to find ways that there's a lot more capital moving into those causes.
So let me ask you something about how the end goal of making it prestigious can backfire. And that has to do with, performative things.
Sure.
So when it becomes very prestigious, and a lot of people are going to want to look like they are doing it. So how do you know who to trust at all, in terms of their intentions, but also in terms of what they actually do? How do you evaluate, things? And I can tell you this from my personal experience, because in some of the areas that I know, I know most people won't be able to tell the difference. And a lot of people around me sound very credible, but are actually lying to you. So I often show my students this thing saying, trust me, and then behind it in different color, it says I'm lying.
Yeah. So anthropologists have this concept of costly sacrifices. You know, I've read some stories of tribes where if you want to become a leader in a certain tribe, you have to go through a very painful ritual. Like, I don't know, they chop your balls off or something like that. And if you're willing to do that, then you are showing to the whole group, to the whole community, like, I am for real. I am serious. So let me give you an example. A cause that I deeply care about is the cause of the fight against factory farming. I think that the way we treat animals is one of the greatest moral catastrophes of our time. And I think one fairly simple way to show that you're for real is to, well, maybe not eat meat from factory farms. I do not think that that is the most effective way to actually tackle this system. So I don't think that shouting go vegan all the time is like the way to move towards a more plant-based diet. We've done that for 50 years. It's not been very effective. But when we're recruiting talent, it is honestly, it's something that I would look at, because then I know that people are more likely to be for real. It's like this, the other thing, like
costly signal, we call it in economics.
Well, you just make that sacrifice, indeed. I mean, donating a substantial percentage of your income is another example. And like, I come from a world of indeed leftist progressives who love to talk about changing the system, who love to talk about abolishing capitalism, overthrowing the patriarchy. But then I see quite a few people who, in their own personal lives, make pretty much no costly sacrifices.
Right.
And I would be less excited about working with those people.
Yeah, no, but I'm talking more about the expertise. So, you know, one of the things is you tend to talk a lot to younger people and potential lawyers, potential consultant. I'm an academic. I'm an academic economist of all types. And so that's my tribe. And, my tribe has a lot of expertise. I'd say, performative, moral ambition, sort of, but mostly ambition of, publishing the next great paper.
Sure, that's the honor code of academia. Like, that's your H index, like high impact publications.
Yeah, getting cited a lot, becoming a president of a society or whatever.
Yeah.
And so using those, so that I see what you say, a lot of wasted talent there. But on the other hand, I can tell you that I could not have diagnosed the problems in banking without the expertise that I had.
Yeah.
So a lot of people who have even grown up in the system are completely misunderstanding the economics of it. They tell themselves a story about what's going on, which is just false, because they're not able to see the economics of it, the actual economics of it.
I am not nearly as smart as you are.
No, I didn't mean to say that. I was just meaning to talk about expertise.
Yeah, sure. But the things I say are relatively simple, right?
Yeah.
This is not rocket science that I'm talking about. Like, hey, the best and most ambitious people, the smartest people should work on the biggest global problems. I mean, that's not a bizarre thing. Like, you don't need a PhD to come to that conclusion.
No, I understand that. I'm just saying, my only point is that, what we're hoping to get is a sort of a change of culture that allows, that values more. So, I mean, the universities themselves, do not value enough, morally, ambitious faculty. I mean, it doesn't even pay in any way your career if that's what you do.
Yeah.
On the other hand, we have privilege because we have job security, many of us, once we reach tenure. And so we are able then, and that's been my pitch to other academics, to do two things. First of all, to cross disciplines, because every discipline in academia is very siloed, makes a set of assumptions that may or may not be true, and doesn't connect the dots with others. And secondly, they don't work with non-academics very much. And that I think is a huge waste of talent. So I'm kind of, when you go around, if you were doing counter academics, you can nudge them.
Well, here's my perspective. So every society, every tribe has its own honor code.
Right.
It has its own ideas about what is prestigious, like
Right.
what it means to be one of the cool ones, right? To be accepted into the tribe. And academia, indeed, as we alluded to, has this honor code of like, you got to get published in the most prestigious journals. You got to do, you know, the most cutting edge work. And that has generated an enormous amount of knowledge. Like, I could not have written my books that are written for a broad popular audience, Utopia for Realists, Humankind. Like, what could be one line in my book could be someone else's entire PhD thesis, right? And I would not have been able to write those books. Still, when I was about 24, I decided to leave academia and not do a PhD, because indeed I was frustrated that this honor code of academia was too insulated. That I mean, this was shortly after the financial crash, you know, when you were doing your groundbreaking work, when you were working on your book. And I was just deeply frustrated when I looked at television and I was looking at economists trying to explain what happened. I was like, I want to listen to historians right now. Where are my teachers, right? There's so much to learn from history here. But then many of my professors were involved in some kind of archaic debate that maybe 10 or 20 people cared about in the whole world. And I remember looking at a whole list of PhDs that have been published at Utrecht University, where I was studying, and thinking, okay, all of these PhDs are really boring, and they're not about the great questions that we face as a species right now. I mean, this was after the Arab Spring, it was after the financial crash, and it was like, history has so much to offer here. So, yeah, like I would say that the academic honor code can be updated a little bit to include more ambition.
Yeah, there should be just a little more reward in the system too.
But I also want to be respectful for that, you know, that search for knowledge.
Yeah.
And very often, you know, what may come across as really weird. I mean, a good example today is Ozempic. I mean, that started in the 70s with looking at the saliva of lizards or something. And now we've got, you know, a revolutionary breakthrough in medicine.
No, I agree with that. So I do want to say, you know, academics, you know, academic expertise and academic inquiry is important, and it's time consuming. So the dissertations you were seeing around that time, you know, probably started, you know, 4 or 5 years before that. So you were a bit harsh.
Well, I was a young, arrogant man.
Right. But, and, you know, and I can't say, you know, what would have happened, you know, in the world. I think you're probably making a bit more of a difference who you are versus if you went to get a PhD in history, although you could have turned your career around any time, as you tell other people they could do. Anyway, so I think we are really looking forward to what would be recorded and published, which is tonight's lecture, which will include a lot of engagement with the audience. And so, and I think you're going to have still a lot of questions today. So we're making you work. Everybody's making you work a lot. And so I thank you for talking to me for a little while. And, great having you here at Stanford Business School.